You going to mug me?
Am I going to mug you?
Is that gorgeous or what, eh?
And I believe I can run a decent marathon.
Download Veely now.
Balls of light, we've seen triangles, we've seen cigar-shaped objects.
Is it something from another planet, like everybody would like to find out?
It was as if you'd gone through into a different time zone and popped back out again.
They have had a what's called a time dilation effect, or a missing time effect. There's a period of time that they can't account for.
These stories are some of the strangest experiences ever described in the UK. We can't tell if they're true, but they are all recounted by ordinary people. Now they are your witnesses. Bonnybridge in Scotland is a village with an unusual claim. In the last few years, it has become the UFO capital of the UK. Thousands of strange objects have been spotted in the skies above the village. Are they visitors from outer space, or is there a more straightforward explanation? One man has become determined to provide proof that there is an extraordinary reason behind these celestial phenomena.
I would say the first major time was when we got it on video, was in 1991, when my brother came into the house and said, I've seen something, something's chased me type of thing. So we were like, yeah, aye, okay, fine. And we went outside, and true enough, there was this thing flying about in the skies, and it was doing like a figure of 8 in the sky, moving about, and it looked really bizarre looking. As we watched it, we actually watched like balls of light coming out of the back of it and flying away from this object. So that eliminated, like, obviously aircraft, helicopter, blah blah blah, because there was no noise or anything off it at the time. So that's the very, very first sighting that I can say we've got concrete proof that there's something strange. So that's how it all started.
Bonnybridge, certainly over these last few years, has been probably the centre of UFO sightings in the UK. We often use the term window area for something like Bonnybridge. It's a small geographical area where a lot of things seem to happen. There are others around the country. Bonnybridge seems to be the current one. Now, why this happens, why it should be in this one particular area, is anyone's guess. But the fact that it is, and we just have to live with that. But there are other areas around the country, and indeed around the world, that seem to have a concentration of strange things happening, not just UFO sightings, but a whole host of things.
There was one night in question, I'd just actually finished work, and I was at the back door of the house. It was approximately 6 o'clock at night, and my dad, it was November, and my dad had shouted at me, there's something in the skies just at the back of the house. So we started to watch this, like, it wasn't just one, there was 2 or 3 of them, like balls of light doing kind of acrobatics in the sky. And the next thing, there was like helicopters appeared, like unmarked helicopters. And the helicopters, they seemed to be chasing the balls of light. It was like cat and mouse.
There does seem to be 1 or 2 individuals that, for whatever reason, are in the right place at the right time to make these observations. Sometimes it's because of their profession. For example, police officers are often out at night and so on when a lot of sightings are made. So it wouldn't surprise me if a police constable or whatever made a few sightings in a particular area, especially if there were a lot of sightings in that area at the time. The odds must be in his favour. But it's not uncommon for some individuals to be around at the right time, whether they're tuning into something or it's just pure luck is another argument, of course.
From the first one, it just snowballed. We've seen dozens and dozens within a matter of 6 months or so. We've seen loads and loads of balls of light, we've seen triangles, we've seen cigar-shaped objects. You've seen lights bouncing about in the sky, like absolutely no way it's aircraft.
Do some people actually see more UFOs? Or are they just more willing to believe in extraordinary explanations for everyday events? Friend of the family John Wilson was skeptical. until one night a few years ago.
We were leaving the house to go home. Craig spotted it, and it was over at the back there. So we all come out the house, and we all walked over to the gates, and there it was. It was bright, like a bright ball, and I mean nothing moves as fast as that and comes back and goes up and down as fast as that, do you know? So, and then after seeing it on the video, do you know, it does look like it is obviously something that needs to be investigated, you know. With all the commotion, Jim was saying, oh look, and Craig's camcording it, and my daughter's gripping my arm because I think she was a bit frightened, you know. But after a while, after we watched it all, and it just shot off from nowhere, you know, gone. It wasn't just there and then it vanished. It was there for a good quarter of an hour, 20 minutes I'd say. We're all mesmerised by it because I'd never seen anything like that before. My daughter hadn't. Obviously Jim and I and Craig has, you know, and it's all on the tape, on the camcorder. You know, I mean, they even hear me swearing like mad because I've never seen anything like that.
There's nothing that would pinpoint Bonnybridge to be you know, an attraction for UFOs or any kind of other phenomena, and the same goes for other window areas. Like I said, there's many of them around the world, but there doesn't seem any particular reason why, or reason that we currently understand, why they should have a concentration in just one small area.
So why Bonnybridge? There are several airports in the area. Could this explain the sightings?
When you go out sky watching, it's a process of an elimination type of thing. I mean, aircraft, you know aircraft, you can hear them, you know the lights on them, you know the colour of lights on them. Helicopters, again, you can hear them, they've got lights on them, you know the colours.
As well as strange lights, oddly shaped objects have also appeared.
The cigar-shaped one that I've got in video, it was actually, again, we were just sitting in the house, me and my dad and my mum, and it was my brother that came into the house and says, you're going to have to come and see this. The movement of the cigar-shaped object was nil. It was just like sitting in the sky, and it wasn't sitting in a straight line, it was sitting like kind of a horizontal type of shape. It was weird. It was offset in the sky, but that was one of the weirdest ones. I mean, it was quite close as well, but again, it's hard to judge how close and how big it is because it's in the sky. You've not got anything to kind of like any backing to judge size or scale on it.
Most sightings, if not all sightings, of lights in the sky, irrespective of whether they're backed up by video or film footage, have a conventional explanation. Vast majority of them, without question, are aircraft. The next category are known astronomical observations, stars, planets, and so on. And I've no reason to believe that just because, you know, he's made a lot of sightings or filmed a lot of these things, that should be any different.
During his nighttime vigils, Craig has captured hundreds of these objects on video. He has also experienced another strange phenomenon: sudden, unexplained equipment failure.
You're trying to capture something on video that no one else is seeing, and you're intrigued to try and you push yourself to the limits to try and get this, but it's very difficult because it can be frustrating because you're standing there all geared up with your camera and everything ready to roll, and you start taking your pictures or your camcorder, and then the battery just goes bump, and that's it. There's absolutely no power in it, and it's happened several occasions, even with brand new batteries. The reason for the batteries going flat, I have no idea. It could be like power surges or whatever. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, it could just be faulty batteries, but I wouldn't say like maybe, I think it's possible like 10 batteries I've maybe bought over the years. I wouldn't say 10 batteries would just go knackered within 10 seconds of the first time we've ever used them.
Could this just be a coincidence?
Most UFO sightings happen spontaneously. You're not prepared for it, so you grab if you've got the wherewithal to grab your camera, you do. Oh, I've no film in it. Oh, the battery's low, and so on. So you're putting two and two together and making five sometimes. But I think it's just because we're not prepared for it. And it's very easy to put a spooky atmosphere around this. And I just went to film it and my battery ran out. It must have been the aliens. Well, I'm afraid not. It's probably because you hadn't charged it beforehand. It's as simple as that.
Strange objects can still be seen in the skies above Bonnybridge. Many people want to believe they are UFOs, visitors from outer space, or even top-secret military aircraft. Craig Malcolm continues to scan the skies with his camera, hoping one day to find and prove beyond all doubt the true cause of these events.
Before the sighting, we used to see odd things in the sky, but you never took really much notice. You know, we'd like talking to Craig and Jem what they'd seen, you know. And then the night that I did see it, it was unbelievable.
It was as if you'd gone through into a different time zone and popped back out again.
They have had a what's called a time dilation effect, or a missing time effect. There's a period of time that they can't account for.
Time slip, a bizarre phenomenon, the apparent distortion of time. Is time travel possible, or is it all in the mind? Cultibragan training camp at Cymru in Scotland, and in the summer of 1993, home to Army cadet trainer Sue Underhill.
It was the 8th of August, and the day was absolutely frantic. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, and it was 2:30 on the 8th before we managed to get a book out at the guardroom and get out of camp. I drove out of camp. I knew the roads fairly well. I'd actually recce'd the campsite, so I maybe just exceeded the speed limit a little bit because they're not the best of roads, but I was familiar with them. I'd been out to the cadets on the campsite anyway, so I flew down to Killing, the village where you turn off to go down the tiny road down the other side of Loch Tay. We were already getting very late.
Sue and her colleague David Hardy were heading to the Aberfoyle Visitors Centre 40 miles away. They had to be there by 3:45. David took over the driving while Sue nodded off in the passenger seat.
The next thing I remember, which seemed an instant later, but you know what it's like when you've been short of sleep for days. David said, "Sue, where's Owen?" I said, "Oh, it's a fishing town on the west coast. Why?" "Oh, we're 5 miles away from it." And sure enough, he'd stopped and reversed up, and there was a sign. "Oban, 5 miles. There's no way we're going to get back in time. Just turn around and head back, you know. It's straight back, you know, we must be on the right road. If we go back the way we've come, we're going to get back to where we started from." So he turned around and we nattered away. And we didn't idle, but we weren't sort of belting along because we knew there was absolutely no hope of getting back. And we came across Locker and Head, and I said, "Oh, go straight by. We'd better go to the visitor centre and, you know, just leave a message. He's going to wonder what on earth's happened." And I looked at my watch as we approached the visitor centre turning, and it was only 3:15. We'd left our camp at 2:30. If you know, later when we looked at the map, it's sort of a round trip of about 153 miles.
How had they managed to cover 150 miles in just 3/4 of an hour? Albert Button, a researcher into the effects of electromagnetic fields, may have an answer.
They feel that a short period of time has elapsed and an enormous amount of activity has occurred. This is desynchronization. In actual fact, a normal amount of time has occurred, but their perception of it is distorted.
But why should they even perceive time to be distorted?
I find it very interesting that these two people spent all of their life living on military bases, because the military produced powerful communication systems and radar, which is pulse microwaves, and they would have been exposed to higher levels of electromagnetic pollution than the average person, which would sensitize them to electromagnetic fields in the environment. So this is a key factor in their sensitization.
Only 2 days earlier, Sue and David had come across other evidence of a strong magnetic field.
We saw a lot of lights ahead of us. And as we got nearer, they were eyes. And we pulled up, and there must have been, I don't know, I mean, I'd say probably 40 or 50, I might be exaggerating, but there seemed that density of cats, all different sort of sizes. Some seemed quite large. And they were sitting around, totally ignoring us, but they were right across the road, they were in a circle, just before the turning to the junction. And I mean, we couldn't go. They were there sort of 2 or 3 minutes, and then they also got up and strolled off their different ways. It seemed absolutely weird to me. But apparently I've heard since that there was probably a magnetic field there, and they love it, and they'd all be attracted to it, again, sit there and do whatever cats do.
Yes, Susan Underhill and David Hardy produced a report on some unusual experiences that they had when they went driving through parts of Scotland. Looking at the areas that they covered, I can see that most of the area is on the Highland Boundary Fault. I talked about geological faults and the energies that these can produce at the surface. They were actually in a highly faulted area that is riven by dip and strike faults, producing piezo-magnetic fields at the surface. Driving through these produce all kinds of anomalous effects.
Could these geological faults produce fields that disrupt perception of time? Sue and David thought little more of it until one evening at the same camp 2 years later.
At 9:30, went and checked on the guard, booked out and drove out of camp. And we headed off for Callender, where there's a Chinese restaurant. And we spent a good hour over a meal, I would think. I knew we'd left camp at 9:30 because of booking out. And we hadn't hurried to Callender. But I know as we left the restaurant, it was 12:15. And we set off, walked to the car, drove out to Callender, and it was one of those magical clear nights that you really only get in Scotland. And the moon shining down on Loch Leonard was spectacular. I drew David's attention to it. Of course, when you're driving, you can't really appreciate these things quite as well. And I was still, I think, admiring the moon's reflection when David went into complete panic, jammed the brakes on, skidded the car to a halt. And there in front of us was our famous sign that we'd seen 2 years before. Open, 5 miles.
Somehow, they had arrived at the same sign over 70 miles away. But this time, as they drove back, they seemed to be on a different road they had never seen before.
It was really quite spooky. And we seemed to drive forever and ever and ever. And eventually we came to a little village and a railway bridge, and it was quite a long railway bridge. You went round a corner actually under the bridge. It was quite a width of bridge. I'd never seen it before.
The only railway bridge over that road had been demolished in 1965. As they came out from under the bridge, Sue recognized where they were.
And as we came out to the other side, I realised we were actually at Loch Leonard. And David had gone past it. We had to reverse up because the turning wasn't like it should have been. It wasn't a big turning with your white lines in the middle of the road for sort of right turn and keep left signs and things. It was only a little turning with no white lines at all. And it was an old-fashioned sign. We thought it was probably a different road. I said, look, let's go somewhere we know. Let's turn down it. So we turned down and drove along, and we were beside the loch. The Loch Earn was on our right-hand side, so it had to be the right road. But there was sort of white painted fence down the road beside us, between us and the loch.
The road hadn't looked like that for at least 30 years.
There was still no sign of cars anywhere, no cars parked outside the houses or anything. It was quite really weird. And it wasn't until we got back to Comrie and to the fish farm, just as you turn into Comrie, that the streetlights were there and everything was, lo and behold, everything was just normal.
Areas that they drove through seem strange and unreal. This is another effect that is also very well documented in the neurological literature called jamais vu, which is the opposite of déjà vu. Déjà vu is where something happens to you and you feel that it's quite familiar. Jamais vu is the reverse, where you feel that things are strange.
Were Sue and David somehow seeing images of the past? Driving 70 miles back from Oban, they expected to get to camp in the early hours of the morning. But when they arrived, they found the gates still unlocked.
And we drove back into camp, and David was really annoyed because the camp gates were still unlocked. And it is a rule that they lock the gates up at night. David let the window down, and to book back in, the guard came up. You have to book in as well as out of camp. And the RSM came out of the guard room and said, "It's not time to lock the gates yet." And we told him what had happened. And he just couldn't believe it, because of course he remembered on Sunday the 8th of August 2 years before, we'd got lost, we thought, and ended up just outside Oban. And here we were, outside Oban again. It was as if you'd gone through into a different time zone and popped back out again.
Sue and David had again covered the distance in an impossible time. Had they also travelled back 30 years? Or is it all the work of electromagnetic fields and jamais vu?
I didn't really realise that we had lost time. It was just incredible because we seemed to have been walking backwards in time. Obviously, now it's amazing that knowing how or what the distance we must have travelled, but at the time it seemed perfectly acceptable.